how do I articulate Leonard in my relationship? There's friendship, and that's the best word that we can use to describe it. But there's something very unique when you have a co-visionary. And I think
Mm.
that at the end of the day, even though we're thousands of miles and landmass apart, we are both kept awake by the same things.
Welcome to Unlikely Gifts, a podcast for anyone looking for hope amid difficult circumstances. Life can be beautiful, unexpected, and at times profoundly difficult. It helps to hear from others who have grown from life's challenges and joys. That's why Leonard Mbonani and Cynthia Bauer are sharing how their experiences working with families impacted by disabilities in Africa have taught them about life's most amazing gifts and its hardest tragedies. These are Unlikely Gifts.
Well, hello. Welcome back to Unlikely Gifts. I'm Frank Boswell. I'm joined by Cynthia Bauer, Leonard Mbonani, co-founders and directors of the organization Kupenda for the Children. Kupenda is the Swahili word for love, and the organization exists to replace harmful beliefs that surround disability, replacing them with beliefs that improve lives. Cindy and Leonard, welcome. It's really good to see you again. For our listeners' benefit, Cindy, you're up in Maine where the
Yep.
glaciers are just starting to recede,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Leonard, you're in Kenya,
I'm
the other
in
side of the
Kenya.
world from us. Do you have a word for glacier in Swahili? I doubt it, or do
No,
you?
um,
For
yeah,
the mountains.
there should be a word in Kiswahili, uh,
Okay.
glaciers, but again, we are in a very hot area. It's very hot today. Yeah, but we like it hot than being
Uh,
cold.
well, and I'm in Maryland where the weather is just right. So it's good to have you both. So listen, it's been a while since we've been able to talk, and I thought it might be good just to ask you to reflect over the last year or so since we spoke last. What stands out for you that has been going on in Kupenda that has you most excited, or maybe something that's impacted you the most?
Oh, thank you so much for that question. Yes, it's been long since we had such a conversation. But otherwise, things have been up and down in Kenya, particularly with my health. I've had so many relapse, and it's really affecting my emotions. But I still want to thank God. He has been grateful. He's been with me all the time. I meet my doctor. He's always gonna give me good news. Even recently, I had some consultation with Dana Faber. And still, they said, Leonard, I think you can continue enjoying your life. And that really gave me a lot of hope. And when it comes to work, yes, we have seen a lot of things happening positively at the place of work. But the most exciting thing that I could mention that happened in the course of the year, particularly to me, is the history about disability among our communities and the way we did celebrate the souls of innocent children that were killed at very tender age just because they had a disability. So that was, to me, the climax of the year because I felt like now we are seeing what really children went through. If we could be shown a place where several children were buried by their parents or community because they had a disability, I felt like, yes, now we are really celebrating these children who died just because it was not their mistake, but they were born with disabilities. But the culture by then believed that these children did not deserve to live and therefore they killed them. So on celebrating this day, I felt like, yes, this is a new dawn for me because now we are going to make this place a memorial where many people can come and learn about disability and see where we came from, where we are today, and where we want to go in a number of years as far as disability is concerned.
Wow. I mean, that's just really profound. That is exciting. And good to hear the news about you, Leonard, because that gives us hope too. We want you doing well. So thanks for sharing that news. What
Yeah.
stands out for you, Cindy? What's been
Well, I mean, I think many of the things that Leonard is excited about, I get excited about as well. And Leonard, when he comes to the United States next week, he's actually wanting to take a visit to the Holocaust Museum in DC because
oh,
the county government, where there's a property, I'll go on and explain a little more on what Leonard had just recently said is there is this site where we had a celebration on December 3rd, which is the UN Day, International Day of Persons with Disabilities. There was 2,500 people coming that day on the site that was known. It used to be a river, it's now dried up, where they used to come to drown children with disabilities. So much so that the place, the actual name of the place, is the equivalent in English of the place of the crippled. Right, Leonard? Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
So that's what the Swahili says, and the thing is, at that particular event, they changed the name of the place to Never Again. So it was known very much by people, and so that's where things like the Holocaust Museum or like museums that kind of walk through the history of slavery, those kinds of things help with ideas. And the county has actually purchased this piece of land and is handing it over to Kuhenza for Kuhenza to actually do with it what we will over the next like several years to be some kind of a memorial or museum or something that helps to remind people of what's happened and what can happen if we don't put the right things in place around disability and disability rights, similar to a Holocaust museum.
I've been to that museum. That's
Hmm.
powerful. Did you say 2,500 people? Did I hear you correctly?
In the Ministry of Gender and Social Justice, which is where disability is under in the government. And so there's a lot of influential people there. And I think it was a very good, Leonard was very, very excited. And I get excited about so much that our Kenyan team has been doing in the last year. They've been traveling more to other countries and other countries have been coming to visit them and see the work that we're doing so that they can replicate our work with pastors and traditional healers. Because the way that we've been doing this work has really helped to change whole communities around disability. And include, like, there are kids that were once told they were cursed because they had cerebral palsy who are now like worship leaders in their churches.
Well, you're changing culture. That's what's always interested me about this. It's not just this person and that person, but you're affecting the society. And we live in society. We're not just islands unto ourselves. Is this river place unique, or were there multiple places like this around the country?
Um, this place is unique because the people who are living along the 10-mile coastal line of Kilifi County, majority of them came from that place where these children used to be killed. And they gave it a specific name, the crippled, as Cindy has already said it. And even when people migrated from this place and occupied different parts of Kilifi County, still the place is being remembered such that when you go to the farthest end of the county and you mention the name of that place, people remember and say, yes, that's the place we know where children used to be killed along a river. It's not the only place because as they were migrating, they did migrate with their culture of killing children born with disabilities. However, there's no specific place where people went to bury those children. They could just bury them within their home, but at a very specific place where they call them peace trees. So they could bury the child under a peace tree. Another child would be born in another family, still they will bury that child with under a peace tree within their home area. So it is now scattered. But initially, there was one very important place where all children born with that kind with disabilities, particularly the severe cases, were killed.
Wow. Well, that's really amazing. So this work that you're involved in, we wanted to just sort of explore the role that friendship has played in this. And I thought it would be good just to start with the question of how did your friendship start? How did you two connect?
It all started when Cindy, when she was a young lady, when she came to Kenya. I think she was doing some research on the elephant shoe. And I don't know what arrangements had been put, but I saw her coming to my office. My office was at Gede by then. And she was in the leadership of my cousin, Willie Kombe. And they came to me. And all we did talk about was about children with disabilities. And because I was in that area of disability already as an assessment teacher for children with disability, I think that's the time I really picked a lot of interest in Cindy because, oh yeah, she's come all the way from the US, but still she has that passion for children with disability. The work that I do on daily basis. And I think this is how we connected and started working together.
I was 24 years old, and Leonard, were you 40?
I was
40
around,
something.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I was still really a kid, really. And I was doing my graduate work, and I had learned the year before when I was in Kenya that children with disabilities were sometimes killed, they were neglected, and I felt like there was something I could maybe do to help because I'd seen someone with an arm like mine, a missing hand, begging on the streets of Nairobi the year before. And when I did came to Kenya to do my master's degree in wildlife biology, I would pass this school every day on my way to the forest where I was doing my research. And the school happened to be called the Getty Home for Physically Handicapped Children. And my field assistant, Willie, I asked him about the school. He's like, actually, my cousin started this school. And I asked if I could meet him. And so that's how Leonard and I happened to meet. And I don't know what Leonard thought of me as like this 24-year-old white girl from the United States.
Okay, thank you. You want me to respond to
Yeah, yeah.
that? That's interesting. Um, when I saw
Well,
when I saw Cindy for the first time, there were many thoughts, but what came in my mind is that, okay, she's like any other tourist who comes to Kenya, and maybe after whatever has brought her here, she'll still go back home. That was my initial thought. But what really touched me is when she said, now can we arrange for a visit to the children who are not in school? And that really happened, and I could really see what was really the passion she had for children with disability. I remember on that particular day, we visited a number of children, and one of them was Charo Shida, who has already passed on many years ago. But I really saw that, yes, this young lady at the age of 24 has the passion. She's here willing to support the work that we do. That is what came into my mind.
I love the fact that you remember these names. These people matter all these decades now later.
Oh, yeah, Shida and the Charo Shida and the Habu Kafi, I still remember them.
Hmm. So C.S. Lewis said that, I have a quote here. He said, friendship is born at the moment when one person says to another, what, you too? I thought no one but me. And I can kind of hear that in what you're saying. You mentioned a passion for these children with disabilities. So can talk to me about where that comes from? Cindy, maybe it's
Sure.
kind of obvious in your case, but tell us a little about that.
Well, I would say, unfortunately, so we have this thing I do sometimes, maybe because some of the losses I've had, but Leonard has had a couple close calls the last few years. And so it's made me really think about our friendship a lot. And I have this thing I do when someone's getting very sick because of the past. I actually start to write their eulogies in my head while I'm running. And so I've really thought about
I
how do
feel
I,
fine, by the way.
yeah, yeah, there you go. But it's for some reason a therapist like said it was okay. It was like good therapy or something. But because I was trying to think like how do I articulate like Leonard in my relationship? And I'm like, yes, there's friendship and that's the best word that we can use to describe it, but there's something very unique when you have a co-visionary. And I think
Mm.
that at the end of the day, even though we're thousands of miles and an ocean or two apart and landmass apart, um, we are both kept awake by the same things. And we have visions. I think the other day, Leonard and I had a meeting, and I can't even remember what we were talking about. I think we were talking about the number of children we could reach in Kalifi County in the next 5 years. And I did all these calculations and I came up with 20%. And Leonard's like, it's like you were reading my mind because that's what I was going to say. It was 20%. And those kinds of things happen every once in a while where like, no, you say it, no, you say it. It happens to be kind of a similar thought. And I do think over time we've definitely morphed into one becoming very similar to each other, even though we come from very different cultures, different genders, different races. But I think we've become very similar. Would you say, Leonard? That's kind of, yeah. But I think it's that co-visionary, like we have a passion that keeps us going, even on days
Yeah,
when life isn't so great for us. And we've supported each other
sure.
through difficult personal times as well. Like I think that there's been a lot of that too.
Co-visionaries. I love that word. That's good. Where did your passion come from, Cindy?
When I've like spoken at colleges and people are kind of trying to figure out their calling or what they should do with their lives,
Right.
I think often areas of some of your greatest suffering intersected with your areas of greatest gift can be the thing. And
Hmm.
so I, I grew up without my hand, and it was a major aspect of some of the challenges I had in my life, not because of things I couldn't do. I spent a lot of my life trying to prove to people what I could do, but more because of how society viewed me. And that's why when I met these people that were similar to me, I was thinking, like, what kind of opportunities did they have? And realizing, like, really the same thing was true for them, and that stigma was the biggest challenge and reducing that. And for a lot of people with disabilities, if the society was different, their life actually wouldn't be that challenging if people weren't constantly staring at them and asking them questions all the time and just accepted disability as a normal part of human existence. But I think that that's where that passion came from, and just knowing that there was maybe something that, Kupenda started partially because I had a story of my own life to share. And that then morphed into people then sharing their story with me because I think the fact that I was a person with a disability made me different than the other white tourists that Leonard encountered, maybe. There was something about that, and that I wanted to make a difference and felt like because of my lived experience, if maybe something of my lived experience could help others, it was healing in itself.
So interesting that, yeah, that area where you suffer, the area where you have the greatest problem turns out to be the greatest gift for what you're called to do.
Yeah,
So,
and Leonard and I have the same what's the word? Like we were talking about our favorite things to do in our job, and both Leonard and I have the same thing, which is the larger the crowd, the better. We do. Like we both very much enjoy being, sharing the work with people and talking public speaking and that kind. I think Leonard doesn't have this. I know Frank, you have it, but like I think being a musician before helped me with some of that. But I
yeah.
think that yeah, we love to have the larger the crowd, the better we get the energy from them.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
where does your passion come from, Leonard?
Before I talk about my passion, let me say about our friendship with Cindy. If given an opportunity to define the friendship that I have with Cindy is like, I would say it is one mind in two bodies.
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
how I would define our friendship with her. Just one mind, but in two different bodies. And that's why she has also said sometimes what I think is what she thinks. What I have as an estimate is exactly what she has as an estimate. But now going back to how I got this passion, I think I did explain this, but it began from my extended family, where we were a family of over 40 people. But among the family members, my aunt had a hearing impairment. and I could see her struggle to communicate with the rest of the family members, and she could not be understood. And they would really make jokes about her because they do not also understand her. And I could see all the struggles that she went through. And I felt like, oh, if I knew how I could communicate with this aunt, that would be really helpful. But that did not come into my mind at that stage because I was still young, until when I was exposed to a group of teachers in special needs education, particularly in the area of hearing impairment. And that is where it reminded me, because I did see them sign to one another, sign to other people. And that is what reminded me about my aunt who had hearing impairment. And I said, oh, yeah. So if I knew this sign language that time, truly, I would be able to communicate. And that is how I ended up picking my interest or my passion in the area of disability. Though I was just training as a regular teacher, but still that pushed me such that after some years of service with the Ministry of Education, I decided to go and pursue further education in special needs education.
Wow. Well, you seem to have clicked pretty early on, right? When you first met and discovered this common interest and passion. Uh,
I don't know when it was that we actually were friends because obviously it wasn't immediate. I think that it was interesting. I think that cultural stuff was getting in the way at first. There was a time when I would say something, and I think because I don't know if you know much about how like Western culture tends to influence some of the other people in that when if maybe made a suggestion, they would just do my suggestion, even if my suggestion was stupid, because of when there's like money involved or something. And I just got some friends and family at home at the beginning to like help support some of these kids. And there was I don't remember when it was. I don't know if you remember, Leonard, or not, where you got to a point where like, I'm telling you, you were wrong. You will see that you were wrong. Like we're able to, I don't think you're ever really truly friends with someone unless you've had a really big fight. You've got to fight and you know what I mean? Like where we got to a point where we could express ourselves in ways where like I think there was stomping away. There might have been like a resignation letter at one point. There's a lot of things that have happened in the past. Like someone said once, "Oh, you it's relationship. How does it happen?" Like you never told him about the resignation letter that time, like forever ago. Hopefully that's okay to
Oh,
mention, Leonard.
thank you. Yes, yes. I think at first we worked as colleagues because remember, as she has said, because of our cultural differences, there were so many challenges during our conversation. We could pick a disagreement. And yeah, that's the time we are still working as someone in the US and someone in Kenya working, but not really friends. But there came a time when we started long conversations outside the work that we do. So we could take, maybe we have planned to talk for about 2 hours. We could take almost an hour talking about our personal issues. And I think it's this that brought us so close to one another until that we now became friends. I remember there was a time even when Cindy wanted also to quit. And I told her, no, I cannot quit. We are here to serve these children.
Mm.
And it changed from being a colleague. Now it turned to be friendship. So we could take a lot of our time talking about our personal issues, what challenges we have at our personal level, our family levels. And then it moved further to being very intimate, where now we could, and this was the most interesting part, where now we started even supporting one another emotionally. You can imagine when I was sick and when Cindy got into the conversation, she would really, really give me a lot of emotional support. She could even tell me, Leonard, this is what we are going to do, this is what we're going to do, have the hope, and so on. And all the efforts all the time was, whenever we want to talk, she would first and foremost want to find out, wow, how am I doing health-wise? And that now had really turned to friendship. And she was so concerned with my health all the time. And she would advise me, she would help me to get access to medication, talk to me. And even the time I was seriously ill, I remember she traveled all the way from the US to come and see me. And that is when I now realized, no, it's not being a colleague again, it's now friendship. And above all, I know everything about her and her home, her parents, her brother, her sisters, as well as she knows my entire family. She can know even who is the first one, the firstborn to the lastborn. So now we are like two families, though apart, one in the US and one in America.
It's interesting to me that you preceded that with the fact that you had some kind of arguments. I was afraid
Mhm.
to ask you about that because that's a big, you know the Proverbs and the Bible. It says iron sharpens iron and that sort of
Mhm.
thing. And uh, it seems like there's a connection in some ways. If we can endure that, then we can trust each other with other things as well. And it's very vivid listening to you. Were you going to say something,
Well, and
Cindy?
I was going to say some of our arguments, the ones that I remember that they're not, they weren't like significant in terms of our friendship, but like one of the times I was really, for whatever reason, I was like, all of the staff needs to get their driver's licenses, which is not common there for people to drive. We were getting a vehicle for the organization, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Why do we have to hire a driver? I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And Leonard's like, I promised you, you were wrong about this. And I was like, and then at the end, it's true. Like, because in Kenya, there is no AAA. There's no one to pick you up if your car breaks down. So a driver is also basically a mechanic when you're in the middle of nowhere. So it's not like when I'm driving, if something happens, I have no clue about what to do. But the drivers that we have, and it's actually not that expensive either to hire a driver. So it's a cultural thing to just say, this is just not the thing. And sometimes, and I think the other thing for Leonard, even in our darkest moments, we find humor in things and we're able to like keep each other going even when things are rough.
Hmm.
Yeah, I just remember when we picked an argument when we were thinking of building an office, and
Oh yeah.
Cindy was insisting that we should have it just next to the ocean, and I said, "Oh no, 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 no! That is not the best place for people to come. It's at the farthest end. Let's take the office to where our people are." And we did pick that argument, but I think along the way, after some months or years, Cindy came and said, yes, Leonard, you are right. And I think this is how we have been working as a team. Sometimes we pick differences, but in the long run, you come to realize, yes, my friend was right. And you just come up open and say, yes, you are very right. But all I would want to say is there has been a lot of trust among ourselves, and we do our discussion or our talking with an open mind. You just tell your friend exactly what your feelings are. And the other thing that I've seen coming out very well in our friendship is that we forgive one another. Yes, we can pick a difference, but at the end of that session, we don't carry that in our hearts. When we meet again, it's like these people never differed at one point or the other. And that is something really, really keeping our our relationship on. And we also value each other's opinion, even when we differ, but we value that, yes, the opinion that so and so has expressed has to be considered. And I want to believe this has also been a binding factor, and also respect each other. We do give a lot of respect, because you can imagine the age difference between me and Cindy. But not even a single day have I looked down upon her because of the age difference. Neither has she at any given time said, "Oh, you are an old man, you have no good ideas." So so I think this is what has really kept us together. Above all, we are walking the same path with the same vision, and mission.
That's where there's also an aspect of our friendship where there's a little bit of a dynamic of a father and a daughter as well.
Yeah.
I can see that. Yeah.
Mm.
What do you most appreciate? I'm thinking how you sort of leverage each other's gifts coming from these different backgrounds and genders and age and all the rest. But what do you value and appreciate and or enjoy the most from your friend?
Like I said, I think I appreciate the ability to in the hardest, weirdest places that we can still find humor in the midst of things. I think that we're able to laugh even when things are really, really hard. I think that even at some of our hardest moments, for me, that's what I appreciate a lot. And I appreciate that Leonard is always coming up with new ideas and we're always, talking about how can we do better. And I think that I appreciate that the work is so important to Leonard. In some ways, it's been kind of keeping him better in terms of his health. In terms of our friendship, 10 years ago when Leonard was diagnosed with cancer, my dad had just died and I had just ended a relationship had just ended that was really rough. And I was ready to quit the whole thing, but it was actually Leonard getting sick that, yes, the children were part of the reason that I would stay, but the biggest reason I didn't quit or try to give over the organization to someone else was like, I can't leave Leonard now. And so our friendship actually kept Kupenda going.
Yeah.
That is so interesting.
Yeah. Yes, as she has said,
What is
I
a friend loves at all times, and a brother is born for adversity. Proverbs 17:17. That's what that sounds like. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Leonard.
yes, I want to talk about an incident where we laughed, me and Cindy, and this was a time I was very sick. She came right into my bedroom and she found me really to be sick. I was sad because of the pain I was going through and the emotions that I was also were affecting me. But little did I know that in a short while, as we were engaged in a conversation, I ended up having a very broad smile. Uh, and I did not even understand how it all came about. But she started to engage me in the work we do, that is supporting the children with disabilities. And along that discussion, I gained strength. I could afford to smile, something that had not happened for a long time because of the sickness. So I could say she's very right that we could even laugh in the midst of a very big problem among us, and still we could afford to laugh. But to me, I want to say what I have benefited most from her, apart from the friendship, is when it comes to the work we are doing. Yes, as she has said, I have the ideas because I'm on the ground, but I like also the ideas, the technologies that she has brought into the organization, such that today we are not where we were before. We have really advanced, and I can say yes, the work we have done has a future. Maybe the way we were doing it at that time, we were not having a future because there was no documentation of what we do. There was no writing of the guides. But today we can say, yes, here is what Leonard and Cindy did. Even if we were not on this earth surface, but still people will see what we do and it will continue to impact other people in the society, both in Africa and outside Africa. And this is what I really appreciate most for the input she brought to the organization.
Yeah. So let me flip that around and ask this. You referenced earlier that you sort of become alike in some ways. You sort of start to blur into each other. Uh, what has changed in you? How has Cindy changed you, Leonard?
Oh yeah, Cindy has changed me a lot. To be very honest, I am not the same person that I was maybe the time we met. And one of the things she has really taught me is about faith and the Bible.
Hmm.
Sometimes we pick some discussions and you really understand, she tells you the inner understanding maybe of a Bible verse, and you feel like, wow, I did not know this. So she has really, really changed me. Above all, I think she has also made me to have a lot of passion for persons with disabilities in general. Because at first I was doing it maybe as work. Remember, I trained as a teacher, and when I became a teacher in special needs education, maybe my work would have been the teaching, and that would be the end. But I think with the coming of the organization and interacting with the Cindy and exposing me to so many things, I think now my my scope of understanding about disability and the passion about these people has really expanded. And above all the time, yeah, it's like we eat, we drink, disability in our within us.
That's beautiful.
Uh,
Cindy, what's
Leonard,
changed in you?
yeah, well, one thing that I was just remembering, I think this is true. Wasn't it that when did you become a Christian? For some reason, I feel like you became a Christian right before we met each other.
yes, I became a Christian at 40, but you see how things are done in as far as Christianity in our African society. You are not really given an opportunity to read the verse and understand it from different perspectives. Sometimes the meaning that is in the Bible would not be the same meaning being brought by the pastor or whoever is passing the word. But with that interaction with Cindy, sometimes she even says, let us go to the Bible. What does it say? And you feel like, come on. And I now, there was a time I felt like, okay. And I think she will remember a time we said, okay, does it mean our great grandparents who did so well to support their families and did everything good for their families and relatives, but they never went to church? Do we want to believe that those people will not go to heaven if at all that will happen? And we came to an agreement together that, well, on earth, you are to serve humanity. Because even in the church, what is the main agenda is to serve one another. And I came to realize, oh, so we are here to serve one another. And even in the church, you are meant to serve one another. And by so doing, that's how we touch God, because we are saving the lives of children with a disability who are children of God and not our children.
Yeah, I don't remember that conversation that same way, but I think that a lot of times we'll say God is good and God is just, and we just don't know the
Yeah.
answers to so many questions, I think. Um, and I think Leonard probably saw when he met my dad, where a lot of Bible, my dad quoted scripture in every single thing he ever did. So in order for me to have a discussion with him, I had to actually have my Bible up because otherwise we couldn't really talk.
Wow.
Um, and so Leonard probably remembers when my dad came to Kenya, he was carrying his Bible everywhere he went, the big, big Bible. And I think for Leonard, so here's the thing, it's Leonard, it's the work. I think one of the things that comes to mind right now is just the way that we work. And with Leonard, like I remember getting so frustrated with this person who was from a foundation that was supporting us. And he was an older person who had done some international work, I guess. And he said, well, how did you train Leonard to be able to talk to people in the community? I'm like, talking about train Leonard. Like Leonard is a gifted speaker and he's a gifted manager. And so I think that what I have learned from Leonard is like how much the culture and the people of the society are able to actually do it themselves. I think it helped to like get rid of the white savior thing that a lot of us have coming from the West. Like, I think that there was this great pastor named Oscar Maruri from Kenya, and he talked about how, back in the old days, the missionaries packed up their coffins to go serve the savages in Africa. And he's like, that is no longer the case. He's like, the church in the United States is decreasing while the church in Africa is increasing. He's like, honestly, it should no longer be missions, it should be global partnerships. And I would say I've
Yeah.
probably learned more from the people that we worked with in the different African countries we've been in that I'm able to teach to people in the United States. Because I think a lot of people think, oh, we're bringing stuff to them. But that's not actually true. And I think that Leonard has taught me just how much vision, how much ingenuity there is amongst the people, and especially amongst Leonard himself. And I think that that helped me to understand. Like sometimes I think when our development director first came to work for us, she'd ask me a question, and I said, "Well, I don't know. I got to ask Leonard." And every once in a while, that was my answer. I have to ask Leonard. And she said, "You really are community driven, aren't you?" And it wasn't like purposeful. It was just like because Leonard and I have a friendship where we trust one another, and I know that at the end of the day, Leonard is doing the best for the kids. And he is actually able to handle really challenging situations and we come alongside. But I think maybe, and I've changed, it's hard to know where I've changed because we've known each other for now 26 years, I think.
Yeah,
So who's to know who I would have been without
uh,
that? Yeah. And I think even after my dad died, my relationship with Leonard even became that much more important because my dad was only 63 at the time. And I think Leonard actually had his relapse a few years ago when he was 63. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, and we really, Leonard and I were so certain. Leonard told me he was dying and that I needed to come. And this was right at the end of Omicron surging, COVID. And I
yeah.
came anyway. And because we were so certain that he was going to die, I recorded most of our conversations because I was like, I don't know if I just want to like. And so even though, and I'm so grateful that it didn't happen that way, we've got this really depth of conversation between the two of us. And the things like when you think you're not going to have a person anymore that you would have. And I think Leonard will talk about like the longevity of the work and how to do it. And I think that the visionary and the idea of like sustainability amongst the community, I think I've learned so much because when I was 24 and before that I always wanted to come to Africa and like save the animals, and also help people. And I think I watched a lot of movies like out of Africa and that, and I
Yeah.
wanted to be those people, but now looking back those are like really bad white savior movies. But I didn't know. I mean, I think my thoughts were right in the beginning, but I think at the end of the day, like I think Leonard just, yeah, he taught me that people are people no matter what, and like I think that a lot of people underestimate what people are capable of doing when given the right resources and tools.
I was going to ask you at some point, but I think you've kind of answered it. What difference does Christian spirituality make? And it just seems to add a whole other dimension and depth of trust. And you got the same operating system. Let's put it that way. And that's got to be a big part of all of this. Uh, and the other one of the things that jumps out at me, I mean, you don't think it's accidental that you ran into each other the way you do? Do you see a larger hand in all of this?
I mean, I often say like when people are looking for a calling, I think maybe we use that word too lightly sometimes, but when people are trying to figure out what God wants them to do or calls them to, He rarely calls you to it alone. And I had a friend, Lauren was actually on this trip with us, a friend of ours at the end of the trip said, it's like God was doing this work and invited you to be part of it. And I think that's
That's what
true.
it's
Yeah.
that's what it sounds like. And I listened to Leonard talking about serving one another, and Kupenda means love. I mean, that's
Mhm.
just what it's all about. It's not just organizational or transactional or just rescuing. It's about loving and valuing the people themselves.
Mm.
Well, C.S. Lewis, I always quote St. Louis, but he said, "Is any pleasure on earth as great as a circle of Christian friends by a fire?" Which I thought was simple and vivid at the same time. And as I was listening to you, I thought, well, I can feel the warmth of the fire just sitting and listening to you. And I know I came across somebody said one of the marks of friendship is that people who are good friends love to talk about their friendship. And you've been doing that. And so I want to thank you for inviting us in and sharing the warmth and just celebrate what's been going on. I think God's brought you together. I think God has kept you going. And I hope He'll give you many more years and much more fruit.
I did want to add one thing. How Leonard and our friendship also is reflected in some of the kids and the way they work. And so I think that we also see friendship amongst the kids that we work with. And they
Mm.
support one another. I think a lot of people, again, think of people with disabilities being supported by people without disabilities, which is not actually the case. We have children who are deaf that help the children in wheelchairs to get around, and the children in wheelchairs interpret for the children who are deaf. And I think those kids become friends with people they would never have imagined because they depend on one another to help them with each other's needs. And so I think those same things are reflected in the kids we work with.
Does this dimension of friendship extend to on some level, not to the intensity that you two have, but are you friends in some ways with these children to whom you minister or to their parents in the community? Does friendship play into that at all?
Yes,
Leonard.
we have a lot of friendship with the children, and what I've realized, the more you serve that child, the more the friendship is built.
Hmm.
And the same with the parents. Today, if I walk into the community, the parents that I meet, they are all my friends. And this is because of that long-term interaction, serving their children, counseling the parents, and so on. And in the long run, they only not look at you just as somebody supporting the education of their children, but they see you as a friend.
And back to the spiritual aspect of our friendship too, I wanted to add one other thing is that there's two times, at least two times, when on the Kenyan side, when my dad was sick and he was at the end of his life, Leonard went and gathered all the children and had them pray for my dad. And he did the same thing when my niece Ellie was at the end of her life. They gathered and they prayed. And I remember my sister-in-law, who grew up in Kenya, saying it meant so much to her because in Kenya, they see children die all the time. And the fact that they felt that Ellie's life was significant enough that they would spend that time to ask God to heal her. And even though that didn't happen, I think the sentiment behind people coming, because as we all like, prayer isn't just about getting what you want. Prayer is also
Yeah.
about people being with you in what you're going through and knowing that those people were around in Kenya, like that I mean, that's why sometimes there's been people on the US side that might say something about um maybe a more direct way that we're speaking to the children about God. I'm like, we work with pastors, we trust the local pastors that they are working with the kids. But I said, but those kids, like, I have never experienced the love of Jesus more than I have coming from those kids and the genuineness that they have. And we often talk about the parable of the great banquet where Jesus says, like, invite the lame, the crippled, the poor, and that's only when my house will be full. And I think one of the reasons those people were specifically called out is that many of our kids, because they've been so alienated from society, when the invitation is given, they jump at it. And they're much more, I feel like they have a connection to God that we're often lacking, especially in the United States, because they don't have a lot of the material possessions that we have getting in the way. And I feel like, again, I get the opportunity to experience Jesus from them on a day-to-day basis. And I'm grateful for Leonard to connecting me to them at the end of the day. Without Leonard, I wouldn't know them.
Hmm. Well, now you've touched on the mystery of suffering.
Yeah.
In some ways, which we've talked a little bit about in the past, but you really are ground zero for, I don't know a better word than redemptive offhand, but there are good things going on in the world, but they're going on in the places where the suffering takes place. And Jesus said, "You're no longer servants, I call you friends." He became our friends. That's the word he uses for his relationship with us. So it's rich with a lot of meaning. And I appreciate you sharing that and fleshing that out for us today. So, Stay well, and I'll look forward to our next conversation in a few weeks. God bless you
Thank
both.
you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Well, we hope you found this episode of An Unlikely Gift to be a source of hope and encouragement to you as you walk through all of the challenges and joys of life. If you'd like to be a part of this meaningful work that Kupenda is doing, visit our website at www.kupenda.org. That's Kupenda, Kupenda. Thank you for listening. And we hope you'll join us for our next podcast, where we're going to explore the topic of wisdom and foolishness, the interplay of what seems wise and what seems foolish, and how things truly unfold in the work that we're doing. Join us then. Take care.